Welcome to the Debrief, the show where we try to break the stigma on mental health within public safety, healthcare, across the board. So this week's episode is going to be a little bit different just because we had a live episode last night on TikTok. Tried to do it on YouTube best we could. Had some technical difficulties as always, so kind of learned to maybe not do live on Riverside anymore through YouTube. But on TikTok, it was great. We had great conversation working with 8158 podcasts. A great individual, Rico. Like I said, we had great conversation. We talked to quite a few different people. People jumped on, shared their story, talked about concerns that they have working in public safety. We had a couple of police officers come on. We had some firefighters come on. It was a great conversation. And I think we're going to make that more of a regular thing, at least on TikTok, because at least now I could just go live on my computer on TikTok and use my camera. So probably do that again next time. But overall, it was great conversation. So again, that will be a more regular thing. I'm working with 8158 podcasts. We're going to figure out kind of a schedule, maybe do it once a month, something like that, and just give everybody an opportunity to come on, share their story, and ask questions and that sort of thing. So great conversation. This week, though, I want to talk, obviously, today being Sunday, it's Father's Day. So happy Father's Day out there to all of you amazing dads, the ones who are working tirelessly at their job, whatever job that may be, and yet still come home and figure out a way to muster up some energy to spend time with their kids. I can tell you it's tough. It's real tough. I've shared my story a few times, and I am not in public safety anymore. I stepped away back in 2022, and that was difficult. I loved the job. That's all I ever wanted to do when I was growing up, is I wanted to be a cop. Never got into that role. I worked, as a corrections officer at a prison. Was a 911 dispatcher. I was a firefighter EMT. I did all of that different stuff. And in 2018, I was still working for the city in EMS when my son was born. And I can honestly tell you, for the first 6 months at least, I don't remember a whole lot. Luckily, I took a lot of video and took a lot of pictures and that sort of thing, and I can go back and relive some of those memories. I was working nights. We did a 223 schedule, which was pretty much irrelevant because we had mandatory overtime and, there was just so much work going on. Plus, I was, at that time when I was working for the city, I was also working for part-time in fire department. I was going back to school. I did eventually end up leaving that for a period of time, that department, and I went and worked for another department where we did 24-hour shifts. I had to drive about a little over an hour to get to work every day. And then came back ended up leaving that department to go back to the city. Then eventually leaving entirely and then working for 3 different fire departments locally. So I did a lot. And I think a lot of it was I was chasing the money, but I was also chasing happiness. And it got difficult because it seemed like I wasn't really happy wherever I was. I enjoyed working for the different departments. And in all reality, I enjoyed my job. I enjoyed what I did. What I didn't enjoy was the constant emotional roller coaster. I was burned out, straight up 100% burned out. And I wasn't really sure how to fix the problem. I didn't have anybody around to basically help lead me in the right direction because in all reality, there's not a whole lot of people out there that are willing to help people, or not even necessarily willing, they're just not sure how to help people. And I think a lot of us don't really know what the signs of mental fatigue are. So, kind of going to go over that just a little bit. Not going to go, this isn't going to be a long, crazy video this week, but these are some of the things that when I go and talk to, different groups, whether that's EMT classes, paramedic classes, or just talking on TikTok, these are some of the things that I like to hit on. So, you're beginning to check out. That's one of the signs, one of the first signs. You're starting to feel like you're starting to look for other jobs, another service or completely different field or whatever. And you just start thinking of excuses on how you can get out of go to work today. I think this is one's kind of a tough one. It's pretty vague because I think a lot of us, especially on Monday mornings, we wake up and we're like, man, I really don't want to go to work today. I'm not feeling it. This isn't me. I just want to stay in my bed. I want to stay comfortable. And some of us, we constantly look for those other opportunities. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. I think you should always keep an open mind of different opportunities that are available out there. Sometimes, if you get the chance to have a conversation with another agency or another company or whatever, I feel like it's always good to hear them out, hear why they feel like they're a better fit for you than where you're currently at. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But one of the things that I highly suggest you do when you find yourself constantly scrolling LinkedIn or constantly scrolling Indeed or whatever other job platform is out there, what I suggest you do if you feel like you're getting to that point where it's just every day, it's like clockwork, scrolling through it like it's Facebook, start to build yourself a routine, build yourself a healthy routine. For me, typically, especially, it's a little easier on the weekdays than it is the weekend. But on the weekdays, what I like to do is I get up in the morning, um, specifically around 5:30. I get all my stuff together, my lunch, pack a bag, all 9 yards, and get my pre-workout in my cup, service cup, whatever it's called, and then get out the door. And first thing I do is I go to the gym. And I'll do whatever workout it is I'm doing that day. Some days I'm a little bit slower at getting to it than others, but I always have a set cutoff time. If I'm not in that gym by this time, then one, it's a failure on my part, but two, then that's it. I'm moving on with the rest of my day. But I would go to the gym and do whatever workout it is that I have set up. Mondays is typically arms. Tuesdays is chest, Wednesday shoulders, Thursday arms again, Friday chest again, and Saturday legs, which my legs are killing me today, I tell you. But the point I'm getting at is you need to set yourself a healthy routine. Set a goal, whatever your goal is. Maybe you want to lose weight. Maybe you just want to be able to have more energy throughout the day. Whatever the case may be, set yourself up a routine to help you reach that goal and then follow through with it. Force yourself to stick to that routine. I usually go about my day after my gym session. There's a few different podcasts that I listen to while I'm at work. And then at the end of my day, it's time spent with family, the best that I can. Then I also will read at least 10 pages of some sort of book. Right now, I am reading Bob's book, Pastrant. Pastrant. Sorry, Bob, if I butchered your last name. Bob was the retired battalion chief for Miami-Dade that we interviewed a few weeks ago. So I'm finishing up his book still, and I've got a queue of other books that I'm moving on to after this. But again, the important thing is set yourself up a routine, hold yourself to it, stick with it. Look for the happiness in things, look for the positive things, whether that's positive things with your job, with your life, whatever, and just try to remind yourself of those things throughout the day. The next sign of mental fatigue is your priorities just aren't the same anymore, whether those are personal or they're professional. You come home, don't want to go anywhere. You don't want to go hang out with friends. You don't want to go to that birthday party. You don't want to do the things that you have normally been doing all the time. And normally that's not a huge deal. When you're frequently turning people down when they invite you to things, it can become a problem. I could say I burned a lot of bridges with friends over the years because I got to the point where the last thing I wanted to do was go out in public. I didn't want to go you know, to that birthday party. I missed some good friends' weddings. I didn't want to go out and party anymore, which that's not necessarily a bad thing, but there were a lot of things that I just didn't want to do anymore. And eventually it gets to the point where when your friends are inviting you to things and you're constantly turning them down, they just don't want to invite you to things anymore. Slowly but surely, you start to lose those friendships. So keep an eye on things like that. Lashing out at people that you care about randomly, and usually it's for zero reason at all. So in this particular situation, your mood has completely changed. You're just angry more often. The tiniest of issues are setting you off. Maybe you're randomly crying or you're just shutting down or whatever. This is your body, your brain trying to tell you that something is wrong. This is the opportunity for you to recognize. It's kind of like an alarm system that your body is trying to tell you something's wrong. We need to get some help. I would I would get angry at the tiniest of things. Maybe somebody was talking just a little too loud. I was angry about that. Maybe somebody was just asking me too many questions, even if it was just one, and I would get angry about that. That one is, I mean, it's still kind of a tough one for me. I still get, at least on the inside, I still get a little angry sometimes for absolutely no reason. But when you start to notice that, usually that can be a late sign that something's going on. My recommendation for that is when you start to notice that you're just getting angry at every little thing, you need to start off with, okay, hold on, let's take a deep breath. Why am I even angry? Okay, I don't know why I'm angry. So then why am I not happy? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, let's fix that. What's going to make me happy? And then it kind of goes back to that reverse cycle again of, well, I'm angry because I'm at this party and I don't want to be at this party. Okay, well, what's going to make you happy? Not being at this party. You have to be honest with yourself. You have to hold yourself to a standard. You need to create that standard first. Because if you don't have one, you can't hold yourself to it. But create some sort of standard. When you start to notice yourself getting angry, do this instead of that or whatever. But you got to think of some kind of way to get yourself out of that vicious cycle because otherwise you're just going to be angry at everything. And that's coming from somebody who was literally angry at everything. I was angry at the world. I was angry at that patient for calling us at 4 o'clock in the morning. Obviously, I never took that out on them. But in the inside, I was angry. I was angry for that late run. I was angry that my family needed something from me when I was home. I was angry that they wanted to spend time with me when I was home. I was angry that they wanted to go do stuff outside on a beautiful day. I was angry at everything. And it took me a while to finally break that. Now, again, like I mentioned earlier, there's still moments where I'm still that way. I'm still fighting that battle every day. But it helps to try to find the positives that are around you. One positive, it's a beautiful day outside. Awesome. You have a family still. You still have some friends. Just got to figure out what those positives are. You find yourself avoiding situations and people, whether that's, large crowds, going out with friends, spending time with family. This kind of goes hand in hand with your priorities aren't the same. But I tell this story quite frequently. There was it was around Christmas time, shortly after Thanksgiving, and my kiddo, I think he had been around two, maybe, yeah, maybe about 2 years old. And we lived just kind of close to the state line of India and Ohio. So we went into Ohio, and there's this small town that they have an area where they set up all these Christmas lights and you can just drive through it. You can see the different displays. My wife was working that night, so it was just me and my kiddo, and we took the truck out there and we were just checking out all these lights, and it was really cool. But when we got there, the line was just ginormous. It felt like it was going to be an extremely long wait. And even though I was inside my truck, being stuck in this line for whatever reason that night, I felt like everything was just closing in on me. I'm stuck in this long line in my truck and I'm starting to freak out. So I even calm myself down a little bit. But I want to back up just a little bit on the way there. We were going down this road and there was a car in front of me. And I look over the side, which is a gravel parking lot for some sort of business. And I see this Ohio State trooper come flying out of that parking lot with his lights on. And he cuts out just in front of the car in front of me, nearly hitting the car in front of me. And I thought, man, that was close. Could have gotten T-boned, could have gotten into a bad accident, could have hurt me, could have hurt my kid. And I think that kind of started setting things off a little bit for whatever reason, kind of triggering the situation. But after we went to see these Christmas lights, my kiddo and I went and stopped at a grocery store to pick up some food on the way home. And I remember standing there in the meat area and I'm just staring and I am inside, I am freaking out. Like slowly but surely, I am starting to lose all control. The store was extremely busy. Obviously, when we were at the lights, I was already feeling kind of crazy. I called my wife and I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I am losing all control. I'm losing it. So she tries to calm me down. Mind you, again, she's at work, so she's busy. I have no idea. To this day, I haven't felt that way again. Um, but that was extremely difficult, and it caused me to think that I don't want to be in that situation again. And the best way to not be in that situation again is to not be around large crowds. So I didn't want to go to concerts anymore. I didn't want to go, if the store was busy, sorry about you, we'll go another day, which gets difficult when you live out here. And when you live in a large city or a large town or whatever, grocery store is pretty much always going to be busy. So you have to kind of fight through that and you have to figure out a way on how to get around that. We'll touch a couple more things and then I'll give you my 2 cents on how you can get through these kinds of things. You start to push people away. I pushed a lot of people away. I had some really, really good friends. And what's crazy is, we talk about people that understand the job, people that understand what you're going through. But the unfortunate thing is even if people work in this job field and you start to show these signs, nobody associates it with you doing the job. They associate it with there's just something wrong with you or there's something wrong with them because you were upset with them. So it's important that everybody knows these different signs because these are things to look out for. I had some very good friends that my wife and I were very close with. We spent a lot of time with them. We planned trips with them. They were part of our wedding. They were very, very good friends of ours. Something happened. I'm not even sure what because it was so irrelevant. But we started to push them away, and we didn't even realize we were pushing them away. And then we, mainly me, got upset with them for not being around anymore. And I found myself being kind of in this similar situation again with another set of friends, but we started pushing them away. And then when we would have conversation with them, we would call them out, but there was no reason for me to call them out because in reality, the problem was me, not them. And by the time I realized that the problem was me, not them, it was too late. That friendship was done and over with. Sometimes friends just stop being friends. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes, friendships run their cycle, and that's okay. There are people that come into your life for whatever reason, and some are meant to only be there temporarily, and some are meant to be there for long term. And sometimes that's because you need to grow. Sometimes that's because they need to grow. But at the end of the day, sometimes friends are going to come around and they're going to be gone the next day. And the sooner everybody realizes that, I think the better we can understand it. If a friend decides they're not going to be friends anymore, you just need to understand that nothing's ever personal. Life gets in the way. I can think of another friend that I used to be super close with. That friend now has two kids. I still have one kid. That friend is now, battalion chief of his fire department. He's got a busy life. I'm now doing different things. I've got a busy life. So it's okay for those friendships to fizzle out. And that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be permanent. There could be a day down the road where that friendship rekindles and we're catching up like it was nothing. I have some friends that I don't talk to every day. There are some friends that I haven't talked to in months. And when we do talk, it's like we haven't skipped a beat. So when you find yourself starting to push people away, especially people that are very close to you, people that you love and spend a lot of time with, try to catch it before you get to that point of no return, and try to figure out how can I fix this problem. So a few other things to look out for. Triggers are setting you off, whether that's smell, visual, sounds, whatever. There's different triggers that may set you off. These are typical signs of post-traumatic stress, and they can include nightmares, daydreams, specific events, so on and so forth. Last night when we were doing this live TikTok session, I told a story about really horrific car crash that I responded to. It was a family of five inside of like a minivan type vehicle, and they had ran a stop sign, and they T-boned into a tow truck. The tow truck flipped upside down, came to a stop in the yard. The family vehicle did end up flipping, but it ended up landing and staying uh, on wheels. The mom was in the passenger seat, front passenger seat, with the oldest child sitting on her lap for whatever reason, and they were not wearing a seatbelt. The oldest child ended up getting ejected through the windshield and was pronounced on the scene. The mom was still alive, but was hanging out of the passenger side door when I got on site. We immediately did a quick triage. We had two paramedic ambulances on scene, and then our engine and a BLS ambulance as well. And I ended up going with the paramedic ambulance, taking the mom, and we were doing everything we could possibly do for her. The mom and the daughter ended up passing away. The other two kids and the dad were fine. That scene stuck with me for a while. That intersection, I could tell you the exact intersection. I could tell you the time of day. I could tell you the weather outside. I can point to the exact location of where the child was laying in the middle of the road. I can tell you exactly where the tow truck was. I can tell you anything you want to know about it. For a couple weeks, it was a struggle. We did a debrief. We call it the CISM team, Crisis Incident Stress Management Team. We called them in because we had some young rookie firefighters on that scene as well, and did a debrief with them. The problem was I did not participate in it as much as I should have, at least from a mental standpoint, because I was more concerned about the younger kids that were on that scene. I was more concerned about my rookies. And for a good couple weeks, I was more concerned about them than I was about me. Fast forward a few weeks, and I'm at a motorcycle event. I'm with some friends of mine. We're doing a charity ride for some organization. And we stopped at this motorcycle clubhouse. I'm standing outside with probably over 100 bikers out there, and I start to break down because I hear the page go out. I get pages on my phone of calls that are coming in from my department, and the page comes out, and it's the exact same intersection. Two vehicle collision, one ran stop sign, T-bone accident, one ejected. And I start to break down in front of all these bikers. And a couple good friends of mine that are with me, they see what's going on and they stand in front of me and shield me from everybody else so that nobody sees my mental breakdown. Kind of a worst case scenario, right? Seeing that page go out was a big trigger for me. For the longest time, going through that intersection was a big trigger for me. For whatever reason, and everybody responds differently, but for whatever reason, when I would go through that intersection, I would just hold my breath. And hold it until the very last second until I needed to breathe again, and then I would start breathing again. I don't know why. That was just my body's way of coping with it, I guess. But for the longest time, those were my triggers. Everybody's just going to be different. You know, some people can tell you they can still smell all of the blood from a homicide scene. Some people can tell you, I still hear the sounds of people screaming, whatever. There's different triggers for different people. The best way to overcome that is to talk to somebody. And this was another discussion that we had last night. If you feel like you need to go see a counselor, you need to go see a psychiatrist, great. I highly encourage you do that. There are different things that they can do for you, like EMDR, that sort of thing, that they can help you get through these. And I have actually gone through that myself. There are a lot of agencies and a lot of departments out there that they have an employee assistance program, EAP, but sometimes those are only good for a few sessions. And in a lot of cases, when you're dealing with things like this, it's going to take more than just, 1, 2, or 3 sessions. And then it gets expensive. And in a lot of cases also, insurance is not going to necessarily cover that. So those are things to keep in mind. However, things that you can do to get around that, the best thing to do is just to talk to somebody. I always recommend people, it's hard for us in public safety to trust people. It's always a difficult thing because we see what evil is. We see it often. So you need to find somebody that you trust. But it also needs to be somebody that understands what it is that you do. They need to understand the job. They don't necessarily have to work in the job, but they need to understand it somehow. When you trust that individual, or when you find that individual that you trust, I should say, and you're having a hard time, you need to have a conversation with them and be like, look, man, I just need to talk. I need to talk about something. And it should be somebody that is going to listen. So start that conversation with, look, I need to talk. I just need you to listen. I don't need advice. I just have to get this off my chest. And start talking. It doesn't have to be professional. It doesn't have to be a family member. It doesn't have to be any of those things. Sometimes the best medicine is just talking. And that's one of the reasons why I love doing the show. And that's one of the reasons why I was talking with 8158 Podcasts about how we need to just do more live events once a month or whatever and give people an opportunity to talk because it can be the best medicine. So maybe you start becoming irate or irritated when you get dispatched on another call. I mentioned that again. I started finding myself getting upset no matter what the call was. It was almost like when I was working and we would have some time off, from making calls. That time wasn't long enough no matter what it was. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 3 hours, but it didn't matter. Even if it was 3 hours, I was still going to be upset. Didn't matter if it was a cardiac arrest, didn't matter if it was a structure fire standby, didn't matter if it was a traffic accident with injuries, whatever. When the tones went off and they called my truck number, I was ticked. And you're not just mad because, somebody needs help. You're mad because dispatch picked you. So now you're trying to come up with excuses of, well, why am I getting picked on by dispatch for going on this call? And some departments, this is kind of weird to hear because, most of the time they're going to dispatch, we'll say engine 19 from station 19 because the call is in 19's territory. Well, with the EMS system that I was in, we were constantly moving. We had posts throughout the city that we would go and park at and wait for that call to come in. So typically, when a call would come in, the closest ambulance would get dispatched to that call. Well, sometimes it felt like, John and Judy over here, their ambulance is right next door to that. Why aren't they getting the call? So we would just try to figure out excuses. But I would constantly get mad for a dispatch for saying in a call. The last thing is you forget your why. So we had this kid on there last night that was talking about being on the fire department. I asked him, what's your why? What was your reason of why you wanted to join the department? I don't accept, when I ask people that question, I don't accept the answer of, I want to help people. And the reason why I don't accept that is because as time goes on, the longer you do the job, you're no longer doing it because you're trying to help people. Eventually that will go away. And it's not always the case for everybody, but for the general populace and public safety, you're no longer doing it just to help people. Because you get to a point, we've all heard it. We've heard people say, man, I hate people. Hate them. And the reason why we say that, because I'm guilty of it, I've said it before, but the reason why we say that is because we see how evil people are. We go on all these shootings and these stabbings. We go to, these horrific car accidents that could have been avoided. We just see how evil people can be. So we start to hate people and we group everybody in together. It doesn't matter who it is. We hate people. We see people do evil things to kids. I hate people, those particular individuals. If you do something to kids, yes, I do hate you. Hands down, 100% with a passion. But at the end of the day, we don't really hate people. We hate the evil things that people do. So you forget your why. So this is why I don't necessarily accept the answer, I'm going to help people. I want you to dig down deep and figure out what your why is. Because honestly, you can help people by donating money to charity. You can help people by volunteering at a soup kitchen. There's so many different ways that you can help people. What's your why? What's the reason? Yes, I'll be honest, my why started off with I wanted to help people. But then it eventually changed to I wanted to make my grandma proud because my grandma was my biggest supporter. She was the one that pushed me to want to do the things that I wanted to do. She was the one that pushed me to work in public safety and to do all those things. And over the years, my why would change. Now I want to make my son proud. I want to make my wife proud. I want to, insert reason here. The point being is when you come up with a why, you need to remember it, whether you write it down and stick it in your car somewhere or whatever. Think of the reason of why you're doing this job so that when you are having these bad days, when you are getting mad at the dispatcher, when you are pushing people away, when you are getting triggered by large crowds or loud noises, when you're just lashing out at people randomly, or you're just starting to check out and you're looking for new jobs, maybe you're looking to get out of the field entirely. Go back and think, why did I come here in the first place? What was my reason? What was my purpose? Sometimes just that little reminder of what your why is can give you a little bit more energy to keep going, to go at least another day, maybe another week, maybe another month. But rethinking of what that why is helps you find purpose in what it is that you're doing. Just some different things to think about. This obviously isn't an all-inclusive list when it comes to signs of mental fatigue. These are definitely things to keep in mind. I do go into more detail on mental health crisis and what a mental health crisis is and what the different signs are. I tend to talk about those things a lot because a lot of those things I did too. Maybe we'll save that for another day, but at least with the mental fatigue, that's obviously the first step, right? You get the mental fatigue and then you go to the next step of, potentially going into mental health crisis. And the best thing that you can do for yourself and for other people that you care about is to cut the dragon at the head right then and there when you start to see those signs of mental fatigue. Take care of the situation then, because when you start to get into that mental health crisis mode, it's a very slippery slope and you go downhill very quickly. So I highly recommend If you find yourself getting into that situation under the mental fatigue side of things, and you've tried different techniques, you've tried to talk to friends, you try to talk to somebody you care about, somebody that understands you, you've tried to find a hobby, you've tried to do things outside of work, maybe you've tried to take some time off, you took a vacation or whatever to kind of restart your brain. If you find yourself in a situation where none of those things are working, take it to the next step. Go speak to a counselor, go speak to a psychiatrist, talk to somebody. There are several different resources available nationwide that you can look to help you with things. One resource that I know of is called Remedy Live. Great organization. They've been around for several years. They have a number that you can text, you can call, you can go on their website, remedylive.com, I believe. They've got different resources on there to help. They've started to help in the public safety field as well. They're a great resource. 988 is the National Suicide Hotline. Highly recommend that number if anybody needs it. There's so many different options, but there's also different rehabilitation centers out there across the country that focus solely on public safety. That's all they deal with is firefighters, police officers, and medics. So if you feel like you're getting to that point, maybe that's an option for you as well. Regardless, if you feel like you need help, get help. Don't second guess it. Reach out to somebody if you are in that situation where you have an EAP program, but it's only good for 2 or 3 sessions, and you feel like you need more. Talk to that therapist. Maybe that therapist has some ideas on how you can continue to get help, even when it's not necessarily covered anymore. There are different options out there, so definitely things to consider moving forward. So with that, again, a very special happy Father's Day out there to everybody that is a dad working in this field, doing the best that they can to provide for their family while still working at their dream job, trying to help other people. Like I mentioned earlier, I think 8158 Podcast and myself, we're probably going to do some more of those live sessions on TikTok. So feel free to jump on there. I'll do a little bit better at marketing that when we're going to do it. This was kind of a test session for us, especially since we were doing it live on YouTube and on TikTok at the same time. Didn't necessarily go as smooth as I wanted it to, but hey, we still ended up having a good conversation with some good people. Keep a lookout for that. I'll be posting that information on TikTok, Facebook, and wherever. It's probably on the website. I haven't done a whole lot with the website lately. Check the website out, tyler.com. Should probably update a little bit. I've got some big things coming. I'm going to wait just a little bit longer to announce some of those things, but hopefully here about once every 6 months to a year, I'll be announcing something new. So appreciate all of your support. Have a great work week this week. If you're working on Father's Day, just know that your sacrifice does not go unnoticed and you are appreciated for everything that you do. I appreciate y'all. Stay safe out there.